on this computer. Here we go. Okay, so Piskel, using Piskel to create graphic images. So just sort of going to go through talking about why I've been using Piskel, and also why what I think it's good for, and then sort of a rundown on how you can actually use it. It's not that complicated, but I think I can just run through a few things that can show you how to do a few things quite quickly if you want to do some singing faces or some images. So this is where you got the website on piskelapp.com. If you type in Piskel just into Google, it'll be the first thing that comes up. So it's pretty easy to find. And you'll end up with this page here. So this is the initial page. You can use it online and sign in and to create your images. I don't tend to. I've never actually done the online thing. I've actually just used the offline version because I like to have it on the different computers so that if I'm not in a Wi-Fi area, particularly doing some sneaky drawing at work or I don't have a Wi-Fi there, I can do that, and then I just save them to my Dropbox folder, and then when I get into Wi-Fi, that all syncs up, and then I can use whatever computer I want. And so if you click down here on the offline version, you will come to this page, and here is where it'll tell you what the current version is, and then you can choose Windows, Mac, or Linux, however you want to say it. I use the Mac version, so I don't, the Windows version I think is pretty much identical. There may be a few different things with the shortcuts, like I think Windows tend to use Control, whereas Mac we tend to use Command on the shortcuts, but that's probably about it. So this is the page that you'll get to, and this is where you're working. So it's not that complicated, and I'll run through this in a minute. But I think it doesn't hurt sometimes to go over sort of reasons why. I mean, why would you use Piskel? And there's a few things that come up on the internet, people asking questions about their images and how they can get them to look good on their computer screens. What do I think Piskel is good for? Probably it's best for the low pixel count matrix. So something like a mega tree like mine. Mine is only 1200 by 50, so I've got 12 strips across. And these are strips going up, so they have 50 pixels. So I've just got 600 pixels, which is not a lot to work with. This year I put in, or last year actually I should say, I put a matrix on each window, and these are sort of even smaller. I think my biggest one is 20 by 22. The smallest one is 17 by 22. So I'm dealing really with 374 pixels. Now I'm guessing there's quite a few people here have P5 and P10 panels. Would that be right?
Yeah, pretty much everybody has them.
Yeah. So whether you would use it for that or not, I don't know. You can do, because you can resize the canvas to whatever you like in Piskel. So it could actually match a P10 panel or a P5 panel, but I think your drawing, you'd have to get pretty detailed with it for that if you wanted. Otherwise, you could probably just get some downloaded images off the internet and just adapt those, or do something in something like Photoshop. But of course, when you compare, you see that this little panel here, which I think this is a typical P10. I don't have any of these, so I presume this is correct, but they're about 32 pixels across by 16 down. You've got about 512 pixels to work with just on this little panel. Which is only 12 inches by 6 inches, so almost as many pixels as you have on this mega tree. So obviously you can build up a nice panel with some pretty high resolution images if you want to, quite quickly. So yeah, a lot of people might think, well, why use Piskel? Why not download the images off the internet? And the reason is, as I said, if you've got a low pixel count matrix, you're going to struggle to find images on the internet that you can actually put on there that look okay. And a question that often gets asked is, why does the image look like crap on my mega tree? So they bring it down, or a sequence is shared from somebody else, and that's got some nice pictures in it, and they put it on their mega tree, or they put it on their matrix on their window or whatever, and it just looks like rubbish. And I think it's been mentioned before. It doesn't hurt to sort of go over it again briefly for people who are perhaps new to to doing this sort of thing. And look, I'm no expert on all this computer stuff, so hopefully I've got most of this right. With an image that you might download, a fairly typical image when you look under images on Google, if you're looking for a Santa or a Grinch or something like that, is about 300 by 300 pixels. Not particularly big, but you have to realize that is 90,000 pixels in total. So 300 across by 300 down. That's a lot of pixels. Versus my megatree, which is 12 by 50, which is 600. Even less, my window matrix, my smallest one, which gives me a total of 374 pixels. So if you are grabbing a 300 by 300 pixel picture and reducing it from 20 to a 20 by 50 pixel matrix, you are reducing that image from 90,000 pixels down to 600. And you can see that most of the information in that drawing is going to disappear. And you'll be left with whatever software you use to try and downsize it will try and do the best it can. But when you are chucking out the vast majority of the information, it's going to struggle to get it down to this. I think this came up a little bit with the Greatest Showman sequence, fantastic sequence. Everybody enjoyed it and it looked great when it was all put together, and everybody shared it, massive number of people using it, and the around the world sequence was fantastic. But I think some people did wonder why some of the animals didn't look great on their matrix. And for me, this is sort of what happened. So over here I could use the elephant ones because an elephant's got a pretty obvious outline, so you could see it was an elephant, but all that detail that was in the original images is gone because I've had to shrink it down so small. Most of the pixels have just been chucked out by the program. I actually tended to swap out the bear and the lion for the elephant because it was more recognizable, because unfortunately, as you can see, the lion on my matrix is sort of turned into a blob that just sort of wobbled backwards and forwards. And a few people, I think, found that, discovered that and was like, why is this happening? And this is why it's happening. You are removing most of the information from that picture. Also, I think for my megatree, for most megatrees it worked really well, the original, but for mine, because it has such a low number of pixels, I swapped it out. Somebody had actually done an image of a singing face of the ringmaster, so I used that one, and that worked quite well. So that's just something to bear in mind when you are reducing down or picking an image of somewhere else off the internet. Here's an example. So I wanted to do the Grinch, and I wanted to have the Grinch face to appear, and I went looking for Grinch images. And this wasn't particularly big. It was a 300 by 300. I've expanded it up to fit on the screen, so to make it bigger on the screen, so it does look a little pixelated. But this is your 90,000 pixel image. And so I got Piskel to shrink it down to fit on my megatree, 12 by 50. And this is what I ended up with, which basically does not look like a Grinch anymore. It looks like a green tree with maybe a little bit of yellow fruit on it. I used Photoshop. It's got a few more shades in it compared to Piskel, but again, I've still got a tall tree. I mean, you cannot see this at all to the Grinch's face. So it's not going to work for me putting that on a tree or on my window, really. If I flip to this example, this is a 4 by 3 P10 panel. It's the equivalent, and it's about 6,000 pixels. Still usable because you can see it's a Grinch face. You can see his eyes, you can see his hand and his fingers, you can see the mouth. You could tidy this picture up a little bit, stick a mouth on here and have it as a singing face if you wanted to, and it would still work. I put it on my window matrix, it still looks like a tree. So it's just not going to work for me. So I had to go and do my own drawing for a Grinch, and that's where Piskel came in handy. So just to run over that again quickly, your P10 panel, a single one has got 512 pixels, 4 panels, 2 by 2, has 2,000 pixels, so you're getting up there on the pixels now nicely. A 3 by 4, 6,000 pixels. So when you're reducing from 90,000 to 6,000, you're not chucking away as much information. Versus me, I'm throwing away most of it, unfortunately. So back to Piskel. So going to Piskel, and this is the interface here, and I'll run over how to draw images on it in a minute. I'll just show you what I did with my Grinch So this is basically for one of my window matrices. I think it was about 20 by 22. The pixels in this instance are quite big. They've just made them quite large. But you can recognize this, I think, as a Grinch face compared to the bush that I had if I shrunk down one of the other images. You can see he's got eyes and nose, sort of a not very happy mouth, and he's wearing a Santa hat. So that worked quite well for me. And when I save that as a GIF, and I'll just sort of enlarge it here to fit on PowerPoint, you can see it sort of looks like a Grinch. I think he's recognizable. He's green, and he looks a bit mean. And on my window matrix, here it is here. It looked a little better in reality. The camera has been a little unkind as it has really picked out the contrast a lot, and so the pixels are quite well defined, so you can see the spacing in between. They're making it a little bit dotty. But in reality, you know, there's a little merging of the colors, so it did look a little smoother, if you like. But you can recognize there he's got his eyes, his face, his hat. And then on my mega tree, I did a singing face, which was a person from Whoville. And again, you can recognize it's got eyes, etc., and the hair and the mouth. So, you know, it does work. But you just got to make sure that you do your drawing and it's going to fit whatever matrix you're using. So look, I'm going to try now, hopefully, and switch to the actual Piskel app. Just let me know if this does or doesn't work. So, not sure what that's there for. Oh, that's the chat thing. I'll just move that over. Can people see the Piskel?
Yeah, we see it.
Cool. So this is what you're working with. I'm just going to change the size of this. This here is the default canvas that I have. It'll be different when you first download it. You can set a default canvas size, and this is a basically 12 by 50 canvas. Because I was doing all my drawings with onto my mega tree. I vary it a little bit now because I've got the other matrices on my other windows, but I'm just going to resize it here, and this is what you can do. You can resize it using this area, this little icon here, and this window pops out, and I'm going to go, okay, I'm going to do a 20 by 22. So I go 20, and oh, that changed to 19. You think that's a bit weird, and you go to 20 over here, and it gone down to 5, and it's like, what the hell's going on? The one thing to remember is to unclick this maintain aspect ratio, because that can catch you out.
Logan, it looks like it's still showing your presentation and not you working in the app.
Oh, is it? Okay. So, oh, here we go. Is that better?
There it is.
I think I forgot to hit
had us confused.
All right. Still learning Zoom, so there'll probably be a few mistakes along the way. Bear with me. Okay, so here's the screen here with this canvas, and I went over to here to the resize canvas area, and this is what I was talking about when you resize it. That there is this little box to remember about maintain aspect ratio, because whenever you change this, if I change that to 20. Oops, go back to 20, that goes to 92. And you could be going backwards and forwards going, what the heck is going on here? I can't get this to go how I want it. You just need to unclick that maintain aspect ratio, and then you can do them independently. I like to resize the canvas from the center. It probably doesn't matter when you're doing a blank one, but it is useful, particularly if you perhaps were bringing in an image already. So I'll resize it, and now I've got my canvas here, which is 20 by 22. So that's what you're doing with the resizing. Over here is where you can change your further settings. You can have your background grid is slightly different, but I like to have it dark because I find this color is a bit bright. You can have a grid here disabled or enabled. The reason why with the grid there is if I draw a line with the pen tool here, all the pixels are joined together. But if you wanted to sort of get a slight feel about how it will look with everything slightly separated apart, you can increase a little gap between them. So if I do that now, you can see a bit of a gap. I don't usually worry about that. I just leave it as disabled. When you're dealing with layers, and I'll show you that at the end, you can change the opacity of the layers, how much you can see through one layer to the next layer. And then over here you can change the maximum frames per second that you can set the image to, which by default I think is 24 but you can vary that yourself. So I'll just hit save. If you want to, let's go through the toolbar over here. I think a lot of people will be familiar with these. This is your pen tool. And first of all, we'll decide on what colors we want to use. So this is where you choose your colors. You have sort of two things you can work with at a time. So you've got a primary left-click mouse button, and you've got a secondary right-click mouse button here. If I click here, is where your palette comes up. You can vary it and say, okay, I'd like a bit of yellow. Click on that, and now your primary mouse button becomes yellow. If you then want to say, oh, I want to work with yellow and green a lot at the moment, just click that one down there, and we will then right-click on that one. Now it's green. And then if I right-click on the mouse, I'm getting the green. So you can do that sort of thing, changing your colors backwards and forwards. Now, one thing I think is good to know about is some shortcuts on this straight away for when you're drawing things, because you're obviously going to change it as you're going along and think, no, that doesn't look very good, because we're dealing with fairly primitive type of images. So shortcuts are really useful, and I'll just move this up a little bit. Down here are your keyboard shortcuts. And if you click on that, they will come up and you can look at what ones to use. A lot of these ones I don't use because you can quickly go across there and just click on the tool. But things like undo and redo, really important, particularly if you make mistakes. And also, Command X. I think on Windows it might be Control, I'm not sure, but it'll show you the Windows versions. But again, very useful, cutting and pasting for moving things around. But look at these ones, because I discovered that if I do this, draw like that, and I go up to here, edit, undo, nothing happens. The undo and the redo don't seem to work under this menu. So this is where you want to do, if I do this and I draw that one, I do Control or Command Z and it undoes, and then I can just keep going back and back and back and undo everything as much as I like. If I've gone back too far, Command Y, we can start going forward. So those are really useful to know. With your color palette here, as you choose your colors, the colors that you use will appear in a couple of places. They'll start to stack up over here, and they'll also appear over here, which is again quite useful if you want to switch backwards and forwards to colors quite quickly. So if I click on red, if I want to change this one to red and start drawing in red, you'll see over here under colors, current colors, the red suddenly appears. And that's good because you can quickly go, okay, I'm going to use my mouse button, change it to yellow, draw in yellow, click back to red, go to red. And that's really useful to go to those. You will find that when you click over here, you'll also see them stacking up over here, so you can choose them from there. So that's also a good place to remember where all your colors are if you want to go back to them quite quickly. I'm just going to go backwards here and remove everything. We'll stay in red. This tool is the vertical mirror tool. It actually is quite useful, particularly if you want to draw symmetrical shapes. So if you click on this and say, I want to draw a robot head that I'm going to make into a face, and I come around here, and as I'm drawing, you can see on the other side, it's doing exactly the same thing. So quite handy as you bring that round. And then you go, I'm going to give them some green eyes with my right-click mouse. So instead of having to go, click, 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 just put it where you want it, do that, and then you'll get them occurring on the other side. So really useful for doing symmetrical images. A lot of people will be familiar with the paint bucket tool, which if you click on that one, we should change the color here and fill it into something else, say yellow, and then fill in and get a yellow face there with the green eyes. And it just fills in this blank area. It doesn't overflow past the border, which most most bucket tool ones do. There's another one over here called Paint All Pixels the Same Color. And that's useful if you want to change different elements in a picture quite quickly without having to click them all. So if I decide, actually, I don't want green eyes, I'm going to go down to here and I'm going to choose blue eyes. With this clicked, I just click one of these greens and all of the greens will turn blue. So again, useful to quickly changing things. If you want to change something on an image, you decide, I don't like the color of the eyes, or if you've gone in here and given the thing some antennae and then you decided you want to change both of those, you could do that quite quickly there. The eraser tool, pretty obvious, erases things. I'm just going to come back, go backwards out of here, just Command Z backwards to get rid of things. This one is a sort of a stroke tool. It gives you a nice sort of, if you're trying to do a straight line, it will do that kind of thing, and then you can go back up sort of that. That is different to if you are drawing it freehand, where if you've got shaky hands, it'll pick up all different little movements and won't necessarily give you a nice sort of straight line. That's that one. This one is a rectangle tool, pretty obvious, draw a rectangle. Circle tool, draw a circle. The shape selection is, I think, for when you're actually selecting a whole, you're selecting a shape. This is actually collecting bits, only bits of this image, because they're only joined by the sort of the corners. They're not really joined properly. But if I go to a square, for example, I can select the whole thing quickly by just clicking on one point, and now you can see the whole square is highlighted. So it's actually selecting that whole thing now if you want to do something or change it. The hand tool is good for moving things around. If you're just working with one image on your canvas and you want to just move the whole thing, you can just grab it, click it with the hand tool, and you can start dragging it up and move it around. So that's actually quite useful from that point of view. If you want to only move part of something, so if I put in, say, a couple of, let's just draw a couple of squares like that in there, and I want to just move those independently, what I would do is I would highlight that with the selection tool, and then with my shortcuts, I would do Command X to cut it out, and then as soon as I click with the mouse to start moving it, you start to see a transparent version of those things that you've cut, and then you can move them around where you want them. And I might want to move them down there, and I'll do Command V and paste them in, and then they've moved. So that's where that works. The lasso tool I've never used. It seems a bit weird, and I'm sure there's probably a way of using it better. It kind of does this sort of weird shape lasso, and I've never been able to control it properly, so I actually don't use it. I just use the more regular rectangle tool. There is a light dark button here you can have, so you can say, look, I'm going to give these get these eyes a little bit lighter. So unless if you don't want to go into a whole new picture or color, sorry, you click on that, and if you see it's got command is darken and shift is lighten. So I go, I want to use a lighter shade of blue. So if we just check that one again, I'm going to do shift, hold shift down, click it, and I'm on the wrong, sorry, I've got to click on that one, and click it, and it slowly gets lighter and lighter and lighter. And then if I want it to go back darker, then it would be command and make it darker. So that's that tool. Here is a dithering tool. If you've got a couple of pictures and you decide I want to shade this all in like a checkerboard, you can just do it very quickly by just dragging it across and sweeping it around. You get a nice checkerboard appearance between the two colors that you've selected. And if you want to quickly go to a color that you've drawn on, so I'll go to here and just pick a green, and then I'll just draw up here or something. I'm on the dithering tool again. On a pen tool, draw a green, and then I go, oh, I want to go quickly back to this yellow. Sure, I can go click it over here. But if I have a shade that I didn't record in here because I've started a new image or I'm editing a new image, or I'm changing an image that already exists that I imported and it doesn't have all this palette information here, you can use the dropper tool, which is quite common in a lot of picture programs. Sorry. So you just land it over the one that you want, and when I click on this, you'll see this green will change this to the lighter blue. Click on there, and then you've got the lighter blue, and then you can start drawing. Oopsie daisies, I clicked on nothing. Go back to your pen tool and draw around there. So that's the basics of the toolbars over there. The next bit, I'm just gonna try. I'll just have to. Oh, look, I'm just gonna delete this. It's probably easier if I do new frame, and we'll just get rid of this. Up here are where your frames go in. So if you want to do a still drawing, obviously you're just going to work in one frame. But if you want something that's moving, then you're going to have several frames, and they're all going to stack up down here, and this will be the first frame and going through the last frame. And when you are doing different images, over here will be a preview of how that thing is moving. So you can see how you're going with it. And over here you can adjust how many frames per second. You want it to go fast, slow, whatever. So for an example, let's just say I'm going to do we'll use the ball one, and I'm going to do a bouncing ball image. So I'm just going to draw a ball like that. And that will be my first image. And I want the ball to go down, bounce off the bottom, and come back up again. So rather than click add frame and then have to try and sort of redraw it or copy it and paste, over here there is a duplicate this frame button. So you can click that and you'll get another frame exactly the same. And then you can work with that. And so if I go, okay, I'm going to select this, I'm going to get this now, and I'm just going to Command X, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to drag it down, and I'm going to paste it back in. I just moved it down a frame. And now you can see over here it's starting to move down and sort of go up and down. Just there's 2 frames, that's all we've got to work with. Then I want it to move further down, and I just duplicate that one. I'm using this frame, highlight it, Command, I can actually drag the whole thing actually because I haven't got anything else in the background. I can actually drag the whole picture. Sorry about that. We'll just go to the hand tool, and I could just drag this whole thing down to there, and it will move down as you can see over here. Go to this frame. Now actually I want to do a different picture here, so I'd like to do the ball a bit more squashed. So we'll get rid of that, and I'll just say add new blank frame. I'll get my drawing here, and I'll now do a squashed ball, sort of roughly, hopefully in the right place. So then we've got that, and you can see down here, if I slow this down a bit, you can see it's coming down and squashing. Now I want it to bounce back up again. I don't want to really redraw all these. So the easiest thing to do is use the duplicate tool, the duplicate frame button. Do that. Now you want to use this button over here, which can move the frames around up in your sequence. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this to the bottom so that it's going to hit the bounce and come back up. Then I'm going to go to this one and duplicate this one, drag it down to the bottom, and then I'm going to go back to this one, duplicate this one. I don't have to duplicate that one because in theory that's the top, but if I did want to, I could just bring it down to here. And now you can see over here the ball is going through a nice motion of bouncing up and down. So, you know, that's how you use your frames to make images moving. And then when you've got something like that and you want to save it, you're going to come over to this part over here where you're going to save your image. And we'll go through these in a minute. If you have things that you want to do with your image on your frame, there are a few extra tools over here. There is a flip vertical or horizontal tool. This circle is probably not a great example. Let's just add something in here so you can actually see it changing orientation. So if I just click it here, it will flip around vertically. If you want to flick it over. If I want to flick it sort of more horizontally, you can see it says hit the Alt button, and you click on it then, and now it's flicking that way. So going from a B to a sort of a funny backwards Q. So useful from that point of view. And then there's other options here. Command and click will apply to all your layers. I'll show you layers later. Or if you want to change the orientation of all your frames over here all at once, then you're going to use Shift and click it, and they'll all turn around for you. Similar idea, you can rotate the frame around like this, and again you've got your options where you can use Command and Shift to do it in your layers or all your frames. Over here there's a sheep. This has nothing to do with New Zealand because I know we've got lots of sheep, but this is, as far as I guess, is related to Dolly, the sheep that they did the first cloning with. And this allows you to clone all your current frames. So imagine that I've decided that I actually want it to be this image bouncing up and down, but I don't want to redraw all those. I can change all those quite quickly. So I just make sure I'm on this frame, and I go to clone current picture to all the frames, and you'll see all the frames change to a Q, or a funny looking Q. And that's a way of quickly changing all your frames if you want to one frame. But be a bit careful. If you made a whole lot of changes and you click on that one, you may end up, you know, removing all the work you've done. I think actually if I do Command Z, I can go backwards. So don't fear, the Command Z, the undo, will get you back there. So that's what those little tools do. Now I'm just going to come over to this area here, and we'll just go through the saving of it. If I click on here, you can save it in sort of some different formats. You can save as here, and it'll save it as a Piskel file. I think if it's saved as a Piskel file, it'll keep all the sort of information here, all your palette information, etc. Whereas if you save it as a GIF, it'll just keep the GIF and won't necessarily save all that information. But to be honest with you, I'm not sure, because I always save it. I do an export actually into a GIF. This is what I use over here. I'm doing a few little spots on there. If I want it, I export it. Now you can export it as a .png file, or you can download it as a zip file sort of there, or you can just download it as a GIF, which is what I do, because we're usually using GIFs in xLights. So I just put download GIF and it will come up, and you can save it to wherever you want and name it whatever you like, and that's how you keep them. If you want to bring in an image that you've seen, that you've worked on before, or you've downloaded one from somebody else, this is where you use your import image. So I'm just going to click on import. Sorry, oopsie daisies. Something's going wrong there. Oh, can you still see it? I think it's all.
Yeah, we can still see it.
Okay, here it is here now. So it's I think the share stopped for a second there. So import. And I do browse images. So if you have a list of images that you want, these ones happen to be PNG ones. These ones I think I just downloaded from the xLights images file. So you can get a hold of Singing Faces there. I'm going to import this one here, click on that, input, open. This dialog box will come up. And the first thing it's going to do is going to say, well, this image is 100 by 100, import as image, and we'll resize your background to 100 by 100. And if you just click import, you go, okay, your picture will appear, but now you're working in a grid that's 100 by 100. You can see the little pixels there at the end of the pen are quite small now. This is not your 20 by 20 anymore. So you have to then decide, what am I going to do with that image to make it fit on my 20 by 20 matrix? And the best thing that you want to do here is again going to the resize tool, and you want to click over here. Well, undo this maintain aspect ratio. You'll go to change the 20, and you'll make it, well, so say we're doing 20 by 22, we'll do that. I want to anchor the anchor point for resizing in the center, because I want it to shrink down from all directions equally. And other thing I want to do is resize the canvas content, because if I don't click that, what will happen is the actual canvas will shrink down, but then you'll only be looking a tiny bit of the original image. It will still be full size. So you want to shrink it down to actually fit on the canvas that you're working with. So I'm saying it to go to a 20 by 22, resize the canvas, and hit resize. And it resizes it. Now, obviously, it doesn't look as good as it did on the original, because you've reduced it from 100 by 100 to a 20 by 22. So it's got to chuck out a whole lot of information. But you can still see that it's a heart, and you could go around and tidy this up and, you know, change these eyes and make them sort of black and square and even, and you could maybe try and round off a few bits. But you can still see it as a heart. And the other thing to remember is that when you have it on a matrix and you're looking further away than perhaps up close on the screen, you know, it will look a little better, because you're seeing a slightly better resolution, because your pixels are closer together, your eyes seeing them a little bit better. So something that may not look good close up can look a lot better far away. So when you're doing your drawings, you know, when you're dealing with it, throw it into your xLights program, see what it looks like on your preview. Does it work okay on my mega tree, which is a weird shape, or what have you? And then even sometimes what I do is I will just load it onto xLights and whip it downstairs, plug it in and run my Christmas tree, my mega tree, and see if it looks okay. Another thing that I found too is that when you're sitting in your garage and you're quite close to your mega tree, It can be hard to make out the details. Everything's quite close, everything's quite bright, and it's hard to make out exactly how good your picture looks. When you're outside and you're further away, it's easy to see that. So something I use, I just grab out the iPhone and I video a bit of it, and then I look at it on the iPhone screen, and it just makes the whole thing look a lot better and will give you more of an idea of what it'll look like in reality for your audience who are looking at it from a distance, or particularly if they're across the road or whatever. So that's something to bear in mind when you're doing that. So that's how you can bring in your images and fiddle around with images, etc. So I'm going to flick back now to, I hope, back to my PowerPoint presentation. I just have to remember this seems to pause the, okay, so hopefully everybody can see. So you're seeing the blank Piskel screen now?
Yes.
Yes, okay, cool. That means we're back in the presentations, that's handy. So look, I'm just going to run through a few things that I actually did that were examples of how to do things. And I'm just going back in the olden days of using the Star Wars sequence, which is actually when I first learnt to use Piskel and know a lot more than I did back then, so it would have been a lot easier to do if I did it now. But so what I did was I've made a few videos, because sometimes doing things live doesn't go as smoothly as you'd like. So I've made a few videos of how I'm doing things, and I'll just talk over them as I go. I drew a Millennium Falcon, pretty basic, but I think when everybody recognises it as a Millennium Falcon, well, everybody just seemed to recognise it when I had it in the sequence. And I did the image here. Now, this highlights something to also think about when you're doing your images. I thought, oh, it would be nice to do a little bit of detail on the Millennium Falcon. I don't want it all plain, and I'll, have a little bit of variation in the shading. You kind of want your colours and your shades to look quite dramatically different from each other, because when you put them onto your display, they're going to be really bright, and this actually all just comes out white. You don't see any of this detail. It's just a waste of time. So be careful. Don't use just small variations in shade. Don't make your nose on a face just a little bit different from the background skin color, because you're not going to see the definition there. Make it as different as you can so that it will stand out. So if you wanted this detail, I would do it yellow or green or whatever. Obviously, it doesn't look like the Millennium Falcon doesn't have green and yellow stripes on it, so you could just leave it as white. But that's something to bear in mind. Obviously, the blue shows up because it's quite a contrasting color to the actual flying craft. Also, when you're drawing something, you may want the object to fly in from off the screen and to fly onto the screen, stop and fly out of the screen. You want to draw your image first, and then you want to do your movements. So it's pretty hard to start drawing something off the screen and slowly build it up and it come out how you want it. So you're better off to draw it on the screen and work in backward steps to pull it off the canvas to go backwards, or then you can drag it forward, obviously, to do the forward motion. This is an example here. Over here, I've actually done the backwards already. I'll show you the backwards in the next video, but this is where I'm going to show you how to quickly make this image run forward. And I'm just going to be dragging the whole canvas forward. You'll notice here I did a black background, and again, early days learning about it, I thought, oh, I'll do a black background, but actually black is off. It's the same as nothing drawn in is off. So you could just leave all this as a checkerboard background and just drag the whole canvas up and down to make the movement on the frames. You don't have to draw in the black. In a way, you might be safer not to draw in the black background, because again, if you get this slightly off, when you click over here onto black, make sure that it shows that the number is 0000, because if you have a slight hint of any color in there that you won't see on the computer screen as black, but xLights will see it and it'll go, oh, I've got to send a bit of information to those pixels, those lights, and they will glow slightly red, and suddenly your illusion of black is gone. So if you're going to do black, make sure it is dead black, or don't use it all, just use it blank. So I'll just hit play here, and what I'm doing is I've got this image and I'm duplicating it down here. I'll just drag it down so that the duplicated image is over here, and I'm going to drag it forward, and you'll see this one, it'll move a little bit further forward. Then I duplicate again, drag it forward, and drag up, and it's a little bit further forward, and I'm moving it frame by frame forward. And over here now I see it is actually moving off the base, and it's starting to leave the base and go forward. And you just repeat that as often as you like. You can do it in bigger steps if you want it to be quick, or if you want it to be smooth, you do it in smaller steps. But you can move it pretty quickly into the center here if that's where you want it to stop. If you're going backwards, so this is where now I've done an example, and I've done all my frames still going forward, but if I start moving it backwards and drag them down here, the thing is actually going to move backwards because these are in order. So I'm going to have to change the order of the frames as I get it to move backwards. So what you'll see when I hit play, I'm going to go up to here, I'm duplicating it just the same, but now I'm dragging the whole frame forward, and then I'm dragging the image backwards. So I'm reordering it so that now it starts further back and comes on. I do the same thing, repeat that one, drag it further back, and now I'm just working backwards so that it starts actually off the screen and flies in. So again, you can do it quite quickly by just doing this quick reordering. Bear in mind that when you draw things back off in Piskel and you pull them back off in each frame, here, if I was to just grab this now and run it forward, the bottom of the Millennium Falcon would be missing. It seems that Piskel will remove whatever's off the canvas, and when you drag it forward, it's gone missing. So bear in mind, you're not going to be able to drag it forward and have all that information still there. So just be careful when you're dragging things off. Make sure you are just going in the right direction. Worst comes to worst, if you think, oh, damn, I've mucked that up, Command Z or Control Z to undo it, or go back to one of your other frames and ditch the frame that is wrong. So does that make sense? Hopefully.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Cool. So look, I'm just going to go back to here. This is just showing an example. That was easy. I'm just moving the whole canvas forward and not having to worry about parts of the canvas that I want to move forward. This is a different situation where now I want to move the laser torpedoes, or if you like, forward, but leave the Millennium Falcon where it is. So this is a section where it fires these things up towards my star on top of my tree, and the light reacts up there as it shoots. But I want to keep this still, but I want to move these. I don't want to keep drawing these individually all the way up to the surface because that would be a bit tedious. So this is where you want to do your selection of this area, and you cut and paste and move it up frame by frame. So I'm just going to, I've got these, I've duplicated the frames of the Millennium Falcon down here, all just sitting still. And this is what I'm going to be adding into these, this area here. I'm going to add into each of these frames, but each one is going to be moved slightly forward. So selection tool, I'm going to select it. Any second now. There we go, got the whole thing, and then I'm doing quietly Command and X. So I copied it actually, I didn't cut it, I copied it, so it'll be Command and C. And then I drag it forwards on there and Command V, I'm pasting it. Now because it's already on the clipboard, at each movement that I put in, it seems to remember that it's still there. So I can just go through and keep adding it, and you can see there's a little dull outline of where it was, and you can just keep dragging it forward, and now you can see that the actual torpedoes are moving right the way forward, and you just keep going until they're completely off the screen. So that's how you're moving parts of a picture without moving other parts. If you want to do, obviously, a static image, and this is the one where I changed the alien who was playing the saxophone in the alien part of the Star Wars sequence, and it moved into Bruno Mars's song, and I wanted this alien to change into Bruno Mars. So it's a matter of just, changing these subtly as you move along. So obviously, I mean, I've copied all these things in here and I've already done them, but if you don't have anything here, you'll just copy that one and then just make little adjustments, copy that one, make little adjustments to it, the arm movement. So, and build your frames up there. So if I just click here, you'll see this arm moves up. On the next frame, we've moved down a couple of frames. I'm jumping frames just to go a bit quicker. So we're down here. If I jump down to here, I've gone right down to this frame where the hand seems to be coming up and grabbing the mask. We'll jump down again and the mask comes down. I've just sort of drawn it down here and revealed Bruno's face up here. And then there's a series here of shots of frames where his hat that I drew just comes down, so I just move those down. And then I want to draw in his shirt and his jacket and have them just sort of appear and his jacket look like it's coming over his shoulders and onto his body. So here the hat's down now, the shirt's starting to fill in. I fill in the shirt and then I'm just putting in some lines here of the pink to bring the jacket into play, slowly drawing it in, bring it more fully over. He's still got the gaps between his arms and his chest, and then it's all filled in and now he's wearing his jacket. And so when we actually go to this sequence and then I run the whole thing, you'll see over here, mask comes down, hat comes down, shirt goes on, and his jacket comes over his shoulders. So you can see I'll just run that again. So you can see how your animation's going, and it's, you know, it's running reasonably smoothly, good enough for your mega tree. And then you save that as a GIF and as an animated GIF, and you can move it, or GIF. I think there's a bit of people arguing over we call it GIF or GIF. I call it a GIF, and you can put it into your xLights like that. If I just go, there's another. This is where I wanted to have the X-wing flying in, and I want it flying through space, but I didn't really want to draw all these stars going past, and that's where you can look at some of the effects that xLights already has to save you some time. So this one here is an X-wing, and I just play it. You can see it flies in, and that was basically it. It flew in, and then it sort of stopped in the middle. It went left and right for a bit, and then it flew out. But I don't want to draw a whole lot of stars. That would take forever. Drawing little spots and moving them all down and moving them all down would be a pain. So this is where you actually go to xLights. And I want to use an effect that's in xLights to give me that look like it's flying through space. So here's my mega tree, which is where I'm going to put my X-wing coming in. I've already got some frames in here. I've cheated, something I prepared earlier. This is the X-wing just going backwards and forwards, left and right. This is the X-wing flying out, and then we get on to R2-D2. So I'm just going to put in that animated GIF of the X-wing flying in. So I'll play the video here. You'll see that I go up there and hit the picture icon, drag it down there, and then I go and browse to where that picture is that I created. And I run down there, and you'll see, I'll just pause it here. You'll see the 3 different animations that I made. I made one just the X-wing, which is I just called it X-wing. It's just it's sitting fairly stationary, but going left and right a few times. One I called it flying out, one I called it flying in. I want it to do the fly in, so I'm going to grab that one, open it, and now we've got it flying in to my mega tree. Now I want the stars, so I went to the wrong place, the life one. I just go to the meteors effect, drag that down onto another layer, drag that out, and now suddenly I've got my stars. I set that up so there's actually dots coming down, not long meteors. Suddenly I have my stars going past, and then what we've done is we've gone through the first sequence of it flying in, we've got it going left and right, and then you'll see it'll get to this last one where it will fly out. And it'll just go out, and done. So, you know, there is where you can use the effects in xLights to actually save you a bit of time. Okay, so I'm just going to go on to singing faces sort of at the end. And I was going to sort of try and do this one live, but I find that sometimes things don't go quite as well as you plan when you're doing them live. So I've actually recorded doing this. So I'll play it, and hopefully you can hear my voice over it. If you can't, let me know, otherwise I'll have to talk over it. So I'm just going to play it. What I've done here is, again, I often draw my own singing faces. The mouth shapes I don't want to have to redraw all the time. And there was a set of mouths that were done for the phonemes that were done for a green Christmas tree, and I quite liked them. They had a little bit more detail to them. They had a tongue, and it looked a little bit more like a mouth running around and moving around, not so much like a hole opening up and down like the Muppets. But that still works perfectly well if you're in time. You know, it still does the same thing. But I kind of quite like these ones. So what I did was, they were on just like a green tree. I just removed the tree from the background, and I just put the phonemes and saved them as files and called them their phoneme names, but called them blank AI, blank E, blank ETC, that kind of thing. So that were just mouthpieces, and then I could move those onto any pictures that I want. So that's quite a good thing to do, and I can share those because into a folder wherever anybody wants them, and they can use those as blanks, if you like, for making their faces, because that has saved a lot of time. And this is where layers comes in and helps, particularly if you're doing more than one face and you want to do the phonemes quite quickly. So I just hit play, and okay, quick demo of making some singing faces. I'll just pause that. Can people hear me talking there?
Yeah, I may want to turn it up just a hair more.
Okay. We'll just, oops, hang on, we'll go back one, I've gone too far. Okay, quick demo of making some singing faces. You can pre-draw whatever face you want. I've done one over here, a little yellow robot. It's just got a little bit more squat. And then I've kept some what I call blank mouth shapes here for all the different phonemes. So what we're going to do, first of all, is we're going to import one of these images over here, and we'll just get the other robot there, it'll open it. It says it's going to resize it, it's 24 by 52, is it okay? And you go okay, import. And here it is here. Now, what we want to do is quickly and easily get the different mouthpieces on here so we can make up a whole range of sort of robot-y heads with the right mouth shapes when we actually put it into xLights. So this is where layers come in useful. So we just add a layer here, and here it is on here. It's a bit transparent, so you can see the other layer underneath. And I'm just going to drag that one there, and I'm going to chuck it in there, and it's sitting now in a different layer. If I move down to that layer, you can see it in the layer behind. Otherwise here it's on the layer on top. And then this one here, we're just going to merge the layers together. So I'll hit merge layers, and now we've got the face with the AI phoneme. So we're going to export that, and we're going to download the GIF. It's going to come into here, and we're just going to call it Yellow Robot AI, and we're going to save it. And there it is there. The easiest thing to do for the next one is just to sort of click back into to make this active again, hit Command Z, which will go back and take you back through your steps, and it will remove that AI. Grab the E, chuck it into there, go up here, merge them together, we have the face, and then export that one. And then we're going to call that one Yellow Robot AI. We'll just change that to E, save it, and there it is there. So we've got the AI one and the AE one, and then you just keep doing exactly the same thing. Back to there, Control Z a few times to take you back and remove it. Grab the next one in and merge. And away you're done for the whole face fairly quickly. So that's the way I've been doing it now. I have been doing a much more tedious way of getting old faces and changing the faces in the background, but using layers is really useful for being able to do this quite quickly. So all you need to do is draw a blank face and put the mouthpieces on and label them appropriately. Okie doke. So look, that's basically it. That's a sort of a run through on the basics of using Piskel, and you know, for drawing images, how you build up your animations, and also how you can do singing faces quite quickly if you want to, you know, just use the same mouth shapes and quickly stick them onto the different faces that you draw. Hopefully that was clear enough. Are there any questions?
So I have a general question, Logan. I've been using Piskel for many years, and all of us, you know, have different size megatrees. And you use the Star Wars Funk, which I absolutely loved as a great example. In my situation, my megatree is 32 by 100. So I took the time to import all of your images into Piskel and then resize them. Would your recommendation be, if you're going to take the time to do that and then, you know, resize them and clean it up, to go ahead and just remove the black and put it all back to the basic canvas? or would it just be to leave it alone?
Look, you could either way, but to be honest with you, I think now, in retrospect, if you've got if you can have a black background, I would just leave it as a canvas, because it does mean that you're not going to stuff up with your black. And this was the problem I had. I actually did make a mistake, and when I did the Millennium Falcon originally, and then when I had the torpedoes or the laser bullets going off, I had, when I was sort of wiping out the little piece of the torpedo behind and clicking on a black square, I didn't realize that it wasn't entirely black. And there was a tiny bit of information going into that picture. I couldn't see it on the computer, but when I put it on my tree, suddenly I saw these red marks. You know, the light that the pixels were glowing red, just a very faint red, but still obvious. And that's because it is saying, hey, I've got a bit of information. I'm going to send some information to the lights. It may be very weak, but it's enough to make those little pixels glow red, which kind of ruins the effect, really. So yeah, I think in retrospect, I would just make the background the canvas. If black is what you want to do, leave it just as canvas. If part of your drawing you don't want it, you want it to be black, again, you could just leave it as blank canvas within the image, because that way you're not going to stuff up by having a tiny bit of information you didn't know and turn what you thought was off onto something on and slightly red, because it'll annoy the heck out of you when you watch a sequence.
And that makes a lot of sense, because then those pixels aren't receiving any data no matter what. So perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else with questions for Logan? Going once, going twice?
Well, hopefully that was either very clear or everybody got completely confused. I'm not sure.
It was clear for me. I was actually, I've never seen Piskel being used, so quite interesting for me. So if nobody has any questions, Logan, you go ahead and stop recording, and I will as well.
Yeah. I'm going to stop. Oh, hang on. Stop recording.